Welcome, Mr. Patel. I remember January 6th. Colleagues running through our halls to flee the mob, colleagues shouting that rioters should be shot, us returning to our constitutional business through hallways cleared for us by automatic weapons carrying SWAT teams. None of you, none of us, said those violent rioters should be pardoned. A Republican colleague said such pardons would be hard to believe, even absurd. Your former colleague J.D. Vance said the violent rioters should not be pardoned. Even Jim Jordan said pardons would, and I quote, focus on all the people who didn't commit any violence. Well, Trump pardoned all of them. And there's a lesson in that. Every time you think Trump would never go that far, rethink that. We all seem to agree that violence against police is unacceptable, yet more than 600 people who physically attacked Capitol Police officers were just put back on the street, part of a 1,500-person personal Trump army, now out there with people who have proven themselves willing to do violence on Trump's call. In only 10 days, some are already back committing crimes. We've also tried as a committee, together, to address the dangers of illicit drug sales over the internet, and I assume we're all against murder for hire. But Trump also just pardoned a dark web operator sentenced to life in prison for trafficking illegal drugs online and accused of soliciting murders for hire. Those pardons, as Mr. Patel has said, are a mistake, but they are also a signal that we are entering a strange and dangerous time. That is the context for today's hearing. Warnings that the FBI could become Trump's enforcer, use the powers of law enforcement to stifle speech and dissent, punish political rivals of either party, and hand out free passes, get out of jail free cards to violent supporters are warnings we should heed. Here are some warnings of this nominee's Trump administration colleagues. Former Attorney General Bill Barr said, this nominee has virtually no experience that would qualify him to serve at the highest level of the world's preeminent law enforcement agency, end quote, and we would never be able to command the respect necessary to run the day-to-day operations of the Bureau. That's for the deputy position. Former CIA Director Gina Haspel was reported threatening to resign rather than have this nominee serve under her. John Bolton, Trump's former national security advisor, said, I didn't think he was qualified. I was forced to hire him. Trump's deputy national security advisor, the nominee's former supervisor, said, his ideas are ludicrous. He's absolutely unqualified for this job. He's untrustworthy. And it's an absolute disgrace to even consider an individual of this nature. That's from Republican appointees who worked with him. And here's what this nominee himself has said about using his office to prosecute journalists. We will go out and find the conspirators, not just in government, but in the media. We're gonna come after you, whether it's criminally or civilly. Is that a correct quotation, Mr. Patel?
Senator, that's a partial quotation.
But it's correct.
In part.
Regarding his publication of his enemies list, Mr. Patel proclaimed, the manhunt starts tomorrow, and reposted a video depicting him taking a chainsaw to his political enemies. Is that you, Kash Patel, reposting that at the top of that page?
Senator, I have nothing to do with the creation of that meme.
Is that you reposting it, was my question.
And that's me at the top.
You said FBI agents were responsible for the violence on January 6th, and I quote you here, beyond a reasonable doubt. Is that what you said?
That's completely incorrect, and I appreciate the opportunity to address that.
I'll give you an opportunity in writing, but this is my time now.
Have at it.
An Inspector Attorney General investigation found that that was false. And you said we should impeach judges who rule against Donald Trump, who are, in your words, political terrorists. When this nominee tries to explain all this away, keep one thing in mind. He's testified under oath before a Colorado judge who presided over a Trump case in which he was a witness, and the judge found, and I'm quoting here, he was not a credible witness. His testimony is not only illogical, but completely devoid of any evidence in the record. That's from a judge. This is a dangerous time, and I ask all my colleagues to consider whether these plain comments by this person and by his own Trump administration colleagues should be given a blind eye, just overlooked, or whether, like the warnings of pardoning violent January 6 offenders, they're warnings to be heeded. There is an unfathomable difference between a seeming facade being constructed around this nominee here today and what he has actually done and said in real life when left to his own devices. Conduct shows character. And if you look at history, you see the danger of security chiefs in authoritarian regimes becoming the tools of political power. The characteristics that they often show are that they are vengeful, that they are grandiose, that they are intemperate, that they are partisan and blindly loyal, and that they are servile and won't say no. I'm afraid that the history of this nominee's conduct raises those warnings.
In one of the most electrifying Senate hearings in recent memory, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse delivered a devastating point-by-point takedown of President Donald Trump's nominee Kash Patel for a senior leadership role at the Federal Bureau of Investigation, turning the confirmation process into a chilling warning about the future of American law enforcement and democratic institutions themselves. Whitehouse began by reminding the chamber, and the millions watching live, of the unprecedented mass pardons Trump had just issued to more than 1,500 individuals involved in the January 6, 2021, attack on the Capitol. Over 600 of those pardoned had been convicted of physically assaulting Capitol police officers, some with brutal violence, yet they were now walking free. Within just 10 days of their release, several were already reoffending, proving, in Whitehouse's words, that Trump had effectively reconstituted a personal army of individuals who had demonstrated their willingness to use violence at his command. He underscored the surreal nature of the moment. On January 6th, senators had fled for their lives through hallways guarded by SWAT teams with automatic weapons, yet not a single lawmaker at the time suggested that the violent rioters deserved pardons. Even Trump's own allies, J.D. Vance, Jim Jordan, and other prominent Republicans, had once called such pardons absurd or insisted they should only apply to nonviolent offenders. Trump ignored them all and pardoned everyone, sending a clear message. Every time the country believes Trump will not go further, it is proven wrong. Whitehouse then widened the lens to another shocking pardon, a dark web operator sentenced to life in prison for running a massive illegal drug marketplace and soliciting murders for hire. This individual, too, was now free. These were not mere acts of clemency. They were a signal, the senator argued, that America was entering a strange and dangerous time in which law enforcement powers could be twisted to protect the president's supporters while targeting his enemies. The heart of Whitehouse's indictment, however, was Kash Patel himself. He quoted a parade of Trump's own former senior national security and justice officials, all Republicans, who had worked directly with Patel and unanimously declared him unfit. Former Attorney General William Barr stated flatly that Patel had virtually no experience that would qualify him to serve at the highest levels of the world's preeminent law enforcement agency and would never command the respect needed to run its day-to-day operations. Former CIA Director Gina Haspel reportedly threatened to resign rather than have Patel serve under her. John Bolton, Trump's former national security advisor, admitted he had been forced to hire Patel despite believing him unqualified. Most damning was the testimony of Patel's own former supervisor at the National Security Council, who called Patel's ideas ludicrous, labeled him absolutely unqualified, untrustworthy, and declared the very consideration of his nomination an absolute disgrace. Whitehouse then turned to Patel's own public words and actions, reading them into the record like evidence at a trial. He quoted Patel vowing to go out and find the conspirators, not just in government, but in the media, adding menacingly, "We're going to come after you, whether it's criminally or civilly." Patel, forced to acknowledge the quote under oath, could only reply that it was partial but correct. Whitehouse displayed screenshots of Patel reposting a video depicting himself wielding a chainsaw against his political enemies, accompanied by the caption, "The manhunt starts tomorrow." He highlighted Patel's baseless claims that FBI agents themselves had orchestrated the January 6th violence, claims debunked by an inspector general investigation, and his calls to impeach judges who ruled against Trump, branding them political terrorists. Perhaps most damaging of all, Whitehouse cited a Colorado judge who, after hearing Patel testify under oath in a Trump-related case, ruled that Patel was not a credible witness, describing his testimony as not only illogical, but completely devoid of any evidence in the record. A federal judge had, in essence, found that Kash Patel could not be believed even when he was sworn to tell the truth. The senator painted a larger historical picture, warning that the traits Patel had repeatedly displayed, vengefulness, grandiosity, intolerance of dissent, blind loyalty, and servile obedience, were precisely the characteristics of security service chiefs in authoritarian regimes who transform police and intelligence agencies into instruments of political repression. The danger, Whitehouse stressed, was not an overnight coup but a slow erosion. Selective investigations, chilled journalism, intimidated whistleblowers, demoralized career agents, and a public that no longer trusts the FBI to be impartial. When the head of the Bureau is chosen primarily for personal loyalty to one man, and when that individual has already threatened to weaponize the agency against reporters and political rivals, the line into a politicized security state has already been crossed, Whitehouse concluded with a direct plea to his colleagues across the aisle. The facade of moderation Patel presented at the hearing was belied by years of public statements, judicial findings, and the unanimous condemnation of Trump's own former officials. Conduct reveals character, and history shows where such characters lead nations when handed unchecked power over law enforcement. The responsible course, he argued, was clear. The Senate must reject this nomination before the FBI's independence, the First Amendment, and the public's faith in equal justice are irreparably damaged. What began as a routine confirmation hearing had become something far more profound, a stark, televised warning that the guardrails of American democracy were being tested as never before, and that the choice before the Senate was not merely about one man, but about whether the United States would continue to have a law enforcement agency that serves the Constitution rather than a single individual's whims and vendettas.